Hi, I'm John Gunterman, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Poultry Keepers Podcast. Joining me in the studio are Mandelyn Royal and Rip Stalvey, the rest of our podcast team, and we're looking forward to visiting with you and talking poultry from feathers to function.
It's a mash, and I was not anticipating the learning curve on feeder design. And I saw that, like, we're very limited in what's locally available, and now I'm looking at, well, what do I need to build? Because I can't just go up the road and buy it, or what do I have to order online and have shipped in? Because the little typical 1 pound gravity chick starter, they're like a round feeder. It didn't let
Mhm.
the milled starter through. It just hung there. So they would empty out the bottom of the tray and no new feed would fall down. And I figured that out within a couple of days. And I noticed that just that first couple of days with that feeder malfunction, they didn't eat as much as they would have. So I was pretty annoyed about that. And then Jeff was annoyed too. And he's like,
Yeah, unfortunately, all the feeders that you can buy at Tractor Supply, Rural King, all those feed type farm stores, because the commercial industry has gone to pellets and crumbles, the feeder design has also gone to being efficient only with pellets and crumbles, right? So there's not a lot of good feeders out there for a milled mash type feed. So we have to go to a different route. And I've always been a fan more. I really don't like gravity feeders. And I've always been a fan of a trough feeder, a large trough feeder giving more access and more space for the bird to be able to eat, especially if you're limiting the amount of feed, like in a layer operation where you only want to give 4 ounces a day. I definitely want access for all the birds to eat at the same time when the new feed is brought out. Commercial feeders are not going to provide that opportunity for you. So,
I immediately switched over to the long chick trough with the little holes in it. And my birds, the heads are too big for them to use it past 5 weeks.
But it'll keep them from billing out and sorting, which is nice. I've noticed built feed especially, or my
Yeah,
new
we had
feed
very,
formulas.
very limited waste.
Yeah,
They were not
but
wasting this feed. They were eating it down to the dust on the bottom,
that's good.
and
You
then
got
they'd
them
eat the
trained
dust.
well then. If you get them habituated to eat their dust, then you don't need to worry about, oh, they're not eating my dust later.
I hear that a lot, right?
It
Because
it hurts. I'm
yeah,
like, "Come on, finish your dust," but I just dump it out on top of the next day's feed, and if that
yeah,
stops working or it's, like, mostly dust, then I just wet it with some milk and give it to them in the morning, and it's gone. And that happens about every 2 weeks, I'd say.
even still, John, if there's dust left behind, they're really not that hungry. And there's a good chance the bird might be slightly overweight. Okay.
Oh, my birds
Um,
are.
yeah.
Yeah.
If they're actually hungry, then they'll eat that dust. And But people think that the dust is waste and it's a problem. It's not. And it's a management thing.
Yeah. I've
I
looked at
haven't
the
had to do
enroving
anything
process
special
in
to
mixing
get
the
them to eat
feed,
the dust.
and there's plenty stuck on the grains that they're ingesting.
Yeah.
I've actually put it on a magnifying glass and went, "They're fine."
Yeah.
It's a perception thing. On being a frugal person.
Yeah. We don't want to waste it. I don't want anybody to waste the dust because that's where a lot of the good stuff is. The vitamins, the amino acids, right? We need to get that into them.
Jeff, I would probably be remiss if I didn't bring up the subject of grit.
I'm
Yeah.
surprised you brought it up, Britt.
Surprised you waited this long.
You know how passionate I am about feeding grit. And to me, I think someone should call the Humane Society if people have chickens and don't offer grit. Okay. So the grit is the only way that a bird can properly break down, process the nutrients that you're giving that bird. It's the same as serving someone a delicious steak properly prepared and they have no teeth, right? You take away their ability to chew and process. Grit is it, and I really get it. I get an annoyed chuckle when people say, "Oh, I free range them. There's plenty of stones out there on the ground." I'm like,
Mm.
"Come on, man. Unless you're living in a gravel quarry or a really rocky area, it's not going to happen. I have one or two customers who do live in an environment where their birds will not take free choice grit just because there's enough in the soil. But you're talking about 2 people out of 2,000 that have that case. So
I
it's cheap.
noticed the grit consumption doubled when coming from a crumble to the milled feed. It easily doubled. I'm going through more grit than I ever have before. And then when we were processing a batch of cockerels, what was that? Like 2, 3 weeks ago, there was one bird where I pulled the gizzard out and it was misshaped. It was not shaped like everyone else's gizzard was. And I was like, I want to know what's inside this gizzard. So I split it open and there wasn't any grit in there at all. So I wonder, for whatever reason, that particular bird didn't care about picking it up, and it gave that bird complications that landed him on the dinner list because he wasn't developing as good as the others. And I was super surprised that there wasn't any grit in that particular gizzard. Everybody else had it.
You don't save your gizzards. You don't open them all up.
Not all of them, and it depends on how much time we have. But when I do, I split them open on one side, see what's in there, and then peel them and put them in the bowl for the dog treats. I personally don't eat the gizzards.
I grew up on gizzards, so I really like gizzards.
Hearts and livers and gizzards.
Yeah, I'll skip the livers, but hearts and gizzards I can eat all day long. We're doing this for the breast folks and other dual purpose people. So it's important, even if you don't eat them, to open them up and see the contents of the gizzard. Okay? It's very important. If you're going to be a really good poultry person, especially if you're processing for your own meat purposes, when you open a gizzard and that first glance, when you peel it open, it should be about 50% grit and 50% other grains, fibers, grass, whatever. But it should be almost 50-50 inside
That's what
that
I
gizzard.
saw yesterday when we were
Yeah.
doing the 1-year-old hens. We did do all of the gizzards because my meat buyer wants them, and everybody had a good load of grit in there, and
Yeah.
then the assortment of greens in their feed. All of them yesterday were normal and perfect.
Good. That's what it should be. Hopefully you took pictures so you can share with people what a gizzard should look like on the inside.
I'll
A
do
lot of
that
people,
next round.
a lot of people
Yeah.
have no idea what they're looking for.
Oh, it would surprise a lot of people
Yeah.
how much grit is actually in that gizzard.
Yeah.
So I pull feed the day before processing. My birds still have access to water up until the moment that they're processed. They make the crop and that whole system easier just for the evisceration process. But any ideas on how to make that gizzard flush it out a little bit before processing so it could be more usable and less gritty in the kitchen?
And you're not going to do it, John. Just,
Okay.
look. So when the food leaves the crop and it enters the gizzard, the particle size is larger. Okay. It will not pass out of the gizzard until it is very small, almost like a paste. So your oat fiber, some of your corn chunks, a lot of your grass or your alfalfas will stay in the gizzard a little bit longer. And you would be talking almost a week without feed before you would get that gizzard to really empty out.
Okay. So split and rinse.
Yeah. Sorry. There's no easy way to do that.
That just highlights the level of involvement some folks probably would have with their birds. I want to utilize the gizzard and I want to make sure that the gizzards are functioning correctly. So we're eviscerating, we're splitting, we're rinsing, and I'm throwing gizzards in a bucket and hearts in another for bagging and later use.
Most people set their gizzards off to the side, and when they're done processing, they'll come back and specifically just clean gizzards. That's like their last task. They're cleaning feet, they're cleaning gizzards, right. So that's like that. Even the next day, if you throw the gizzards in a little bit of salty ice water or something, you can come back and clean the gizzards after you're done processing. So if it was a hard day of processing, the last thing you want to do is stand there and clean gizzards.
Sure.
Because it's
Now,
really no.
Mandy's customers, they want the bird as complete as possible, correct?
Yeah, I did let my meat buyer take over for me yesterday because normally I'm the one doing the evisceration. And I showed him how I do it, and he said that he's faster. I was like, "Okay, then you go ahead and do it." So
Heck
he
yeah.
showed me his way, and while it wasn't as pretty of a result, he's not worried about what they look like in a shrink bed. Like, he's not looking for retail pretty carcasses. He's looking for how fast can I get this bird to where we can cook it and eat it. And so he took off a lot more skin than I would. He split up both sides, and I wouldn't do it that way, but he was faster than me. I'll give him that.
Mandelyn, I'm curious, has this feed trial caused you to adjust your management practices with the birds in any way? Or are you still doing it pretty much the
The
same as
level of involvement is definitely a lot more time intensive, especially doing the weigh-ins when I have to catch everybody, record their tag number, get their weight, keep track of who I already did. So I take totes until they outsize those totes, and then I'll switch over to a cage. So I know that I got everyone. Like Jeff was saying, I only needed to do a percentage of them, but I've been doing all of them every time. And I usually need to allow sometimes as much as 3 hours to get through everyone and then clean their pen, set them back up again. And taking that little extra time every day to feed, because I'm a big fan of bulk feeding to where I don't have to do it again for a week. But I want to know that daily intake. It added a lot more chore time, but with what I'm learning from it, that's worth it.
gotcha? How many birds do you have in each study group?
I think it's something like 54 total now. I did have to call one pullet who got a leg injury that was outside of an easy fix. And so that gave me the opportunity to go ahead and see what was happening on the inside. And there was already great fat development at 8 weeks. Everywhere that I would expect to see the fat, it was already starting to develop in there. The fleshing was great. So that was a good little peek.
And I'm assuming that as you're weighing these birds, you're also evaluating the fleshing.
Yeah, that's what makes it take so long because I'm checking out their bone spacing. I'm feeling down the keel on either side of the breast. Because I've noticed in some genetic pools, you'll get a lot of breast meat up front and then you lose it about halfway back. And as I go through trial after trial, I'll start to see, is this a genetic thing or is it a feed thing? And then when I see it out of the same hatch batch where one bird will be a lot better flesh than another, then they're on the same feed, it must be genetic. So it helps me a lot in the selection of who I want moving forward as a potential breeding bird and who's going to come up for dinner.
You've adopted a much tighter leak and you used to do open pen mating where you had multiple
Yeah, I
suitors.
split off a couple of trios, but I haven't gotten down to the pair yet. But freeing up the space that I did yesterday, we processed 11 one-year old hens. So that dropped me down to 24 remaining. Emptied out 2 pens so I can backfill with better youngsters out of this grow cycle. Because I'm always hatching every year. I never take a year off. And then I keep filtering as they grow through different milestones to get down to the very best 1.5, 2 year old birds. I like to do it complicated and really get to know them.
Jeff, just out of curiosity, how will the information Mandy collects, how will you be able to use that data in some way to improve what you're doing?
Yeah, always. Every time we have a field trial, regardless of what it is, whether it's management, whether it's feed, whether it's breeding, no matter what. Every time we do a field trial, everybody gets to learn from it, including me. Anxious to see it. If Mandelyn says, I think we can do better, which I doubt she's going to tell me that, but I think there's always room for improvement. I'm a person who believes there is no perfect and there's always something we can do to make it better. Okay. And I'm going to keep doing that.
Very good. Madeline, how will you, how do you think this will help your breeding effort moving forward now?
If you rule out complications from environment, husbandry, nutrition, once you have really dialed in how you're raising your flock up, then that shows you who the better birds are because you know that they're not held back for any reason. they're not overloaded with parasites. They're not covered in mites. They're not living in filth. They're not living in, you know what I mean? Once you dial in everything, then you see what's what in the genetics. And then you can start sorting and selecting through them. Because I have learned over the last several years that when I see little 4-pound hens, like while they're a really productive layer, they're not producing meaty offspring, even if they're with a really well built, fleshy male. A lot more of the type and the growth and all that comes from the female side of it. And so I'm looking for very particular traits coming from the females, especially before I even consider hatching from them. And this
Sure.
feed is really bringing the rock stars up to the front.
Really setting you up for pedigree mating and trap nesting and a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
controlled breeding program.
Based on how things are going this year and what I'm seeing from the grow outs, next year is probably going to be another really great season, even better than this one. I'm
Deal.
excited.
So what are we going to try next year, Mandy?
Pair hatching to get the percentages of how many good usable chicks come from it. So let's say I take this pair, I get a total of 50 eggs into the incubator. What is that rate of call out of that pair? Am I
Well,
keeping 10% or 50%? Awesome. I want to see what the rate of call is when you narrow it in like that. Because
uh,
right now, I just bank on having a 50% call rate while I'm clan hatching, but I haven't because I don't know who the specific parents are. Where are those calls coming from? Is it spread out equally, or is it just certain birds that don't need to be in that breeding pen at all?
so we're not doing another field trial or another feed trial next year.
We'll see if we come up with any more ideas. But after I get through, I was talking to Jason, the owner of Kraut Creek, and I asked if he was interested in doing a comparison of a corn and soy free version because some folks in the market want to have their eggs and meat as corn and soy free. And I know that it's going to change the growth rates. So if I use the same genetic pool of birds and compare and contrast what those changes are, that'd be neat.
You brought it up. I wasn't going to. There are only a few feed mills or feed manufacturers who can make a corn soy-free diet that is even close to being adequate. Okay. That is the toughest feed to formulate is corn soy-free. And you can't do it with anything, right? You need very unique, specific ingredients and everything has to be done perfectly. Okay. To see the true genetic, to see the real growth rates and performance of the bird, that is a really tough feed to make, especially for a breeder feed.
Yeah, it's very expensive to do it that way. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to do a long study, just one grow of corn and soy, like the regular feed that we're on now versus because I'm curious to see, does it lengthen out the grow time past 18 weeks? What changes specifically? Because I don't
Usually,
know.
usually we see at least an additional 2-week grow up, about 10% more feed consumption to get the same body weight. And for birds that you want to keep as breeders, I don't know that they get the same reproductive organ development in while they're growing. So if you do that, I would want you to almost keep a few pullets and cockerels to keep to see how their breeding performance is the following season, right? Because I think we're going to see a deficiency in fertility, hatchability, and so on. Yeah.
See, now I want to try it.
Yeah, it's no fun at all, but you live close to a feed mill that I have confidence we can make the feed right. But still, I think we're going to see a lag in overall breeder performance. Sure.
Something I've been interested in seeing, but I don't have the heart to do myself, is my birds back on a commercial off-the-shelf feed to see how they perform after being on this optimum nutrition. Because I worry about that when people buy my chicks and my pullets.
Mhm.
How are they going to respond to somebody feeding them this 16% off-the-shelf feed if I can't educate them enough? You had mentioned a possibility of doing a grow out side by side with just a bagged commercial feed
Yeah, that's my
alongside,
next one.
and that really piqued my interest. And it would be interesting to see after your breeders have been on this optimum nutrition, how they perform down the road.
Right. And Jeff was saying that I should see a drop of consumption anywhere from 20 to 25%.
with the high
But
quality feed. Yeah.
so I
Yep.
want to do that side by side of the old chick starter we were using versus this new custom formula and see what all those differences are all the way down to the penny.
Cool. That's next. Awesome. I'm excited.
So it is exciting stuff, right? And
It
you know,
comes
folks,
down to the penny. Your profitability really matters. And
But
said it so
it's
many
what shows you
times.
what you have to charge for your market birds.
Yeah. I keep repeating, I never started saving money on feed until I stopped trying to save money on feed. When I
How that
started
works.
providing optimum
Mhm.
nutrition at the moment that it's required, along with grit, is when I saw some relief in the bottom line.
it doesn't make any sense though, because when you calculate your price per bag of feed and then adding grit on top of it, and it costs more, right?
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you're seeing a 10 to 20% decrease in total feed cost. The math doesn't add up for the average person, right? So you got to take that leap of faith a little bit and try it for yourself. Don't make the assumption that all feed is created equal. And that's the
And,
other thing we're proving with Mandy's trial, right? Is
yeah.
it-
And having a background in human nutrition and physiology and recognizing the declining nutritional content in our food and how they bulked it up to compensate for them and the health follow, it makes perfect sense this is happening in our poultry as well.
oh yeah.
Mandy, you're what, about halfway through this study?
Yeah, I'm halfway through.
I really hope we can get everybody back together after you have finished the study and had a little bit of a chance to digest the data and see where it goes. I think we got a pretty good idea where this is headed, but we won't know for sure until all the.
So far, it seems like Jeff was right.
Never question Jeff.
That would make a good T-shirt. Jeff was right. Jeff is always right.
It's not about being right. It's about helping people be better. So
On the birds be
Agree.
better too.
Well, I've
Just
worn
the
out
difference in the adult
another.
birds. My adults, when I switched them over to the feed that doesn't have any fillers, it doesn't have any garbage in it, there's a difference in their temperament and contentment. They're not standing around acting like they're starving while they have a full feeder. They're going outside a bit more. If I go outside the barn door, look down the runs and they've all come out to see where I'm going and if I'm going to throw them some greens or not. The activity level's better. And even my husband noticed that the eggshell was better. He was like, "These eggs are looking good. What'd you do different?" And I was like, "You know how I'm driving 2 hours to go get feed now?" Because of that.
Folks, I think this brings us to about time to call it a show. And Jeff, thank you so much for coming and spending an hour with us today.
hey, thanks for having me on.
And we look forward to having you on more in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to be when Mandy's doing the feed trial, although it sounds like this is going to be a long-term project for her going one trial after another. And Mandy, kudos to you for knuckling down and biting the bullet and doing this trial, because I think it's going to help not only you, but I know it's going to help a lot of the other people as well.
And it keeps giving me new questions to answer. Yeah, it keeps it fun. Otherwise, it's boring. It's just going out there and doing the chores, collecting eggs, and you don't think anything else about it until you have a problem with your flock. And then, depending on what those problems are, it's going to be either feed or management or environment, or and you go through that process of elimination. And once you really go through all of that learning, because you don't get to learn everything about keeping poultry that first year or 2 or 3. Because I have had chickens pretty much over 30 years, and I'm still just now realizing how much I still don't know.
I agree. I feel the same way.
Come on, Rip. You got 50 years experience, buddy. You know what? It just shows us that we never know everything.
Now, the more I learn, the more I realize I need to learn.
Right. I'm right there with you.
All righty. We're going to wrap it up for this episode of the Poultry Keepers Podcast. We hope you'll join us again when we're all back together. Thank you for joining us this week. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released, and they're released every Tuesday. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we'd like to ask you to drop us an email at poultrykeeperspodcast@gmail.com and share your thoughts about the show. So thank you again for joining us for this episode of the Poultry Keepers Podcast. We'll see you next week.